Welcome back to Block TV. We are here with a special edition as Bitcoin crosses the $10,000 mark. The price of the top cryptocurrency broke a yearly high on Friday and continued climbing to numbers not seen since March of 2018, when it was coming down from its all-time high. The rest of the crypto market is also in the green, with altcoins seeing moderate gains on the day. The 10,000 mark for Bitcoin was seen as a long-time psychological barrier, with the bulls successfully broke through despite a combination of factors that introduced uncertainty into the crypto market. The break came at a week in which the cryptosphere and indeed the entire financial system was rattled by the announcement that social media giant Libra, Facebook, was entering the digital assets sector with the Libra project. It also came just hours after news broke that the Financial Action Task Force is planning to strengthen control over cryptocurrency exchanges to prevent digital currencies from being used in money laundering and related crimes, a move that could have significant implications for the sector. Now, to help break all this down, I'm joined in the studio by Block TV analyst Asher Westrop-Evans. Asher, what a day.
Certainly is, Ron. What a day indeed. We've seen it finally not just hit that $10,000 barrier, but as you said, shatter through it with a seemingly alarming force. And it seems that this is going to pave the way for increased growth long into the future, potentially into those all-time high territory.
Yeah, can't wait to see it. I know, throughout the day, I was on my computer, on my phone all day, just waiting for that.
Glued to that screen, waiting for it to hit that mark.
Talk about chart junkie.
Right. And it was hovering there for so long, around that 9,800, 9,900 mark, just waiting and just teasing everyone with the possibility.
And then what, 3 a.m. UTC, it actually hit the mark, and since then it's kind of been on a, shall we say, parabolic
exactly,
increase?
And bringing the whole market with it. But as we note here, again, Bitcoin leading the way with some of the biggest climbs. So it's interesting to see that Bitcoin really is taking back the power in the market, being a market leader and market driver, which, given the larger macroeconomic forces, which I know we'll get to, is interesting to say the least. It's interesting to see how the market is treating this.
Let's put this in perspective. $10,000, it's a great number, but it's a number, and this isn't a huge surprise, right?
No, it's not a huge surprise. It seemed to be an inevitable run-up, and many analysts had predicted similar moves in the past, and we can actually even take a look at some of the analysts that we've highlighted here.
Yeah, let's give credit where credit's due.
Exactly, some of the good
predicted
gurus
this,
who've said, that in various ways, shapes, or forms, they think this is going to happen. So if we take a look here, we've got Naeem Aslam from the CMA at Think Markets, who predicted, seemingly quite accurately, but perhaps a little early, that the $10,712 mark will be hit on June 30th. Now, we stand at around June 22nd at the time of filming, and he's bang on the money, a week ahead of time.
Not far, and what, that 10,700 is basically where we are right now.
There's been a bit of a stop point at the moment, a bit of a shelf that we've plateaued at the moment. So there's something in that, I will say. All
right, Naeem Aslan, hats off to you.
Exactly.
Please come on our show. Tell us how far this is going to go. Who else is in the ballpark?
So we've got here, of course, Dan Held, co-founder of Interchange, coming on Block TV and making an interesting prediction. Let's take a listen.
I would say 6 months, we maybe retouch 10,000 again. 10,000, maybe touch 20,000. I think that would be really optimistic, though. So like 10 to 15. And
this was just a couple of weeks ago.
Exactly.
So again, he even not optimistic enough in his
exactly. I mean, yeah, he was predicting this. I think it was about 2-3 weeks ago, and he was saying that. So we're talking about by November is around his prediction range. We talk about that 6 month. He's saying within the 10 to 20,000 range so far. He's proved accurate. It will be interesting to see if, as you say, maybe he will have underpredicted by the time we get.
We'll be sure to speak to him again this week and also give him his kudos live. Who else you got?
All right, so Tom Lee, co-founder of Fundstrat Global, of course. Tom Lee, everyone knows, big player in the market. He's predicting, if we're looking a little further afield, that once we cross that 10,000 barrier, he saw as a significant psychological point, that we could be hitting 40,000 by end of November. So certainly, people are excited now. Exactly. I mean, those all-time highs re-hit will be something for the market to be very excited about. But it seems if his prediction and his analysis is correct, then we're on the right trajectory to really break some new barriers and have a very exciting rest of 2019.
Can't wait to see that. And you got one more for us?
Of course, one more. Speaking to us at Consensus, we've of course got Peter Brandt, the famous Peter Brandt, man of needs no introduction, the CEO of Factor LLC, who had a good prediction for the end of this particular run. Let's take a look
here.
I think we're going to 50, but I don't know when. And then here's how I look at it. It's
Please,
really simple.
please.
I'm a gambler, and I don't know anything about it. But I don't have to know anything about football to
Or the
bet
product
on
to trade.
to bet on the New England Patriots. I could be a rugby player and bet on that. And so I look at Bitcoin and I say, okay, there's a 50% chance it goes to zero. It becomes worthless, that the whole narrative is a big scam. But there's a 50% chance we could go parabolic again. And if we go parabolic again, we can go up to 300,000.
All right, there's a nice number.
Exactly. So he's throwing out some very tasty numbers out there, but as he said, he's thinking in the 50,000 mark, and then again, as he said, even looking further afield, 200,000 to 300,000. So 10,000 might be a short stop on a way to a very big number. People could certainly take a pause, but people could
And
be
just to
getting
remind,
excited.
I mean, how rare this would be, because when he was talking to us at Consensus a month ago, he was saying, all right, we're in the third parabolic rise of Bitcoin, and here we are. This is already number 4 if this continues in this trajectory. So I think we're at a never before seen pattern stage here. But aside from like the financial technical analysis, there's also nuts and bolts. The Bitcoin ecosystem was ready for this, right?
Yeah, certainly so. I mean, there's been a lot of good building to that. So we've had for example, the hash rate for the Bitcoin mining has hit all-time highs, indicating that miners are really back on the trend. They're chasing that good cheap energy. They're really getting into new, more efficient rigs and building, and that's adding a lot of security and a lot of depth to the industry. Of course, we also had the futures market predict this ahead of time, break through that $10,000 barrier before the main market actually caught up. So there's a lot of upward trajectory. There's a lot of good action in the future. And we'll have, of course, some more technical analysis coming into this.
Well, we'll look at the numbers a bit more with our technical analyst, Joe Saz, in just a bit. But this climb to $10,000 for Bitcoin came amid some other news that are muddying the water or have interesting implications on the crypto sphere. I'm talking about, first and foremost, an announcement that broke just a few hours ago. The FATF, they're making recommendations as expected that might have some significant implications for the exchanges. What can you tell us about it?
Okay, so this is a very important decision, and looking at that macro space, as I said earlier, it's very important to analyze what's happening in and around the ecosystem because it doesn't exist in a vacuum. So what we've had here come out from the FATF is that all virtual asset service providers, VASPs as they call them, which include exchanges, which include other entities that pass crypto information on a larger scale, will be required to transfer information about their customers to one another when transferring funds between firms, such as what we see in the SWIFT system that currently exists in the banking sector at the moment. So to get a little into the nuts and bolts of this, they say that each transfer will need to include the originator's name, so that's the sending person's name, the originator's account number, and where such an account is used to process the transaction, the originator's physical, and we're talking geographical address or national identity number or customer identity number, but some sort of unique defining number, and the beneficiary's name and the beneficiary's account number where such an account is used.
So this is like what's required of banks.
Exactly. They're really bringing them in line and saying crypto exchanges require the same levels that we're talking for bank exchanges, for equity market exchanges, and just saying that crypto exchanges now have to be brought into the mix and provide a lot of information that doesn't exist within the ecosystem of the cryptosphere at the moment. We don't have a SWIFT system in the cryptosphere. We don't have a system that can conveniently and neatly transfer that information, and that's not what was established when the Bitcoin was set up. It's not, a wallet address does not give any of that information. Purposefully, it's not tied to any physical
it goes against part of the ethos of the whole ecosystem, and I'm seeing two problems with this. First of all, I'm seeing about can existing exchanges even get that information? Do they have the resources to ask for it and to implement it? And I guess number two is, are people going to play ball with this? I mean, is this people who bought Bitcoin or entered the cryptocurrency market because of this anonymity or privacy, if they're going to be required to hand over all that personal information, what's the difference between that and fiat in these days?
Well, I mean, that's going to be an interesting thing, but if we talk about mass adoption, I think people are going to have to. I mean, you can't ignore the FATF. It's a powerful international body, with a strong capacity to blacklist organizations or blacklist particular exchanges or groups that can really impact their capacity to get credit, access to larger financial infrastructures. And the fact of the matter is, crypto is not in a space now where it can exist in its own, parallel world. It's still tied to global financial structures. And if it wants to get that sort of mainstream level of adoption and go outside sort of the cypherpunk anarcho-capitalist world, then to bring that money in, you're going to need to be compliant, because institutions certainly aren't going to come into play if you're being blacklisted. They've given the FATF has currently given 12 months for compliance, and they plan to have a review in June 2020 to see what the state of compliance is. But they've given out these guidelines with little action plan. I mean, there's no, this is how you can do it.
Plan,
Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but certainly it sets up a strong battle potentially between that establishment and some
I'm wondering aloud here whether that announcement had any impact. Maybe it's too early to see that impact on the price of Bitcoin cryptocurrencies.
Well, certainly so far it doesn't seem to have. I mean, that announcement came and we got the massive surge regardless. That being said, given the timeline of it, and also, I mean, the crypto markets are very wary of regulation, but there is a flip side to that, which is saying that when the FATF is talking about cryptos, it means that they're taking notice of it, and it means that potentially there's a codification of regulations coming into play, which when so many cryptos have been living in a sort of limbo state in so many jurisdictions up until now, there is potential that this could actually be a net positive for the market if there is some sort of cohesive action that can be put in place. They've put out their statements, this is what you need to happen. Maybe they can work with those in the crypto sphere to actually
there are people
who
have been calling for regulations for a decade. And then this also might have an impact on privacy coin. Maybe people who, maybe privacy coin will be outlawed altogether, but maybe it'll also boost them because people who don't want to play by the rules, just go through the privacy coin.
I mean, privacy coins is going to be a trickier space, and it's going to be interesting to see if they'll make accommodations for people who want to use privacy coins, because that does go against a lot of the AML sort of standards and the tracking of terrorism sort of standards that organizations such as the FATF say are the reason they need to put this, what some would call onerous regulation in place.
All right, and of course we cannot talk about the cryptocurrency space this week without mentioning Libra, Facebook's cryptocurrency project. Major, huge announcement this last week, and there were some people who credited the rise of Bitcoin with this announcement, bringing more people into the cryptocurrency space. What are your take?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, the fact that Bitcoin itself is leading the charge on this market run actually fits very well with that narrative that implies that Libra is the reason, because people would look at Libra as a potential access point, a mass adoption point to the market, and they see Bitcoin as that store of value, counterbalance, something that could work very well alongside Libra as a means for people to have that store of value option within the crypto sphere. So the fact that we're seeing those 10% rises in 24 hours is specifically coming out of Bitcoin and the other altcoins playing catch up, it does signal that narrative very well, and it implies that really that could be a response to Libra and could be new money coming into play. I've yet to sort of look down at the volumes to see if we are getting new things into play, but certainly in terms of a fundamentals and larger macro narrative, it makes a lot of sense, and it'll be interesting to see if it continues to do that, and more importantly, should the regulators crack down on the proposed Libra policy,
which
as has been suggested, will we see the countervailing pullback in Bitcoin, or is the momentum there, as we saw back in April when we had that whale bump out of the 4,300 mark? Once you get the momentum going, is there just enough excitement that the bulls are just going to take it away with this?
FOMO is the magic word here.
But there's one other point as well I'd like to touch on in this. Also, I mean, we've got to look at the wider market as well, because we've seen a bit of a fears of a downturn in wider sort of mainstream markets and equity markets around the world. The potential for a recession has been talked about a lot. The Federal Reserve in the US indicating that they might have a potential rate cut in the near future, and markets are very responsive to that. But interestingly, we saw a rise in gold in the last day or so. Gold markets jumped up about 4%. Now, the gold market's currently worth about $8 trillion, so a 4% jump in the gold market is about $320 billion. Interestingly, the current cap of global crypto markets hovers around $320 billion. So as exciting as it is for crypto markets in the moment to see us hit that $10,000 mark, we need to be humble in the face of the establishment, the grandpappies of the financial world, and say that, if gold can jump that in 24 hours and jump the whole value of the crypto sphere, we still have a long way to go. But that means that if you're in the sphere right now, you could maybe ride that wave all the way to the top.
And we know that Bitcoin especially shares some characteristics with gold.
Exactly. And we're seeing that tie playing out now, which is very interesting, and I think a net positive for the market.
All right. So as we said, Bitcoin crosses 10,000. Huge implications going forward. We'll see how high this can go. I think that's a good wrap up for now. We're going to be right back. Don't go anywhere.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter